Hi everyone, welcome to Zine Club. This is the Los Angeles Public Library Zine Club on Zoom, where we meet at least once a month and we have a featured zine maker, comic maker, illustrator, creative here today, Medar de la Cruz, also featured on the LAPL blog with an interview by Salvadora, who's also with us. And we're excited to have a conversation and be creative and share zine making tips, comic making tips, or anything you all have in mind to discuss. So thank you so much for being here and take it away, Medar de la Cruz.
Thank you so much, Ziba. And thank you all for joining. I was telling Ziba before we started that I'm just gonna kind of go for it and talk a little bit about my experience as an artist and with the hopes, but no pressure that the folks that are on this call um, either unmute and go ahead and ask a question or share a thought or share it on the chat, at which point I'll read it out loud and go from there. So, um, being that this is a zine series, I'm gonna go ahead and make that the theme of how I go about this my spiel, my talk. And and that'll just lead me to down many different paths. So as Ziba said, my name is Medar. I currently live in Brooklyn, so it's 7 p.m. over here. I just had dinner. Um, and as I was eating dinner, I was thinking about what it is that I'm gonna share about, and especially with the theme of speaking of zines. It's personally been a little bit for me since I've actually printed my own zine. But I acquired one yesterday I was at the skate park yesterday. There's a skate park here that's the only public publicly available indoor skate park. So there's like a coffee table with books and zines and then there was one section or one little table that had like a one-page zine that was clearly there for anybody to just grab and take home. So I got this one. It's called Zacky Times. It's actually uh really silly. Like if I were to actually read any of this stuff out loud, it would just sound like a whole bunch of nonsense. But I really like it because of how silly and unserious it is. Um, and and I'm glad to just have come home with something, and especially since the bus ride home for me was um an hour and a half or so, I had something to like laugh at and read while I was on the bus. And that's basically how I feel everything started for me. That being my foray into zines and DIY culture. To make a long story short, I'm from Miami, Florida. Um, I'm the son of immigrant parents from the Dominican Republic who moved to Miami after living in New York for a little bit, and before New York, they were in Dominican Republic. My my father is a poet, and he went back to school when I was a little kid and eventually went to study in Texas at the University of Texas at Austin. And I joined him. So I lived with him and my stepmom for a couple of years in Austin, Texas. And in Austin, Texas, I got really into skateboarding and punk music. And I was kind of like going through the motions of this big change in my life. And I was an emotional 11-year-old. And the music that I listened to acknowledged those emotions. and skateboarding went hand in hand with that. And Austin, Texas is a very unique place, especially in 2004, where DIY culture and skateboarding and the whole there's I'm sure it's still a thing, but it felt very real at the time when they used the phrase "keep Austin weird," which I'm sure people have heard, and I know it's a phrase that is used in other places, but it was a weird place, and it was a really. I came back. I actually moved back to Miami after only living in Austin for a couple of years, but I came back uh, a weird kid, like a changed kid that was a lot a lot more open to DIY culture um and I was only there when I was 10 and 11 and 12 or I think the way I think about it or I thought about time in those days was like what grade I was in. So I was in the fifth and sixth grade. Um and I just remember going to and starting a collection of used CDs. Um and every CD had a little booklet in it. And that's I felt like where my maybe my obsession and my introduction to what's very similar to a zine is the little booklet that comes in a CD case and where you could read all the lyrics of the music that you're listening to, but also where you can see photographs of the artists and things like that. So I had, which it's so sad to think that I don't have anymore. I actually still have a lot of the CDs, but I had a huge CD collection and I read all the lyrics and I loved my little booklet that came with my CD. Um, and and I also used to skate at a skate park that was a DIY skate park. So the word DIY was already in my brain as a little 10-year-old. And um later on when I started to notice that DIY was a culture and DIY um became later on in high school not just about skateboarding but about making your own stickers um and making your own gifts. That's how I see zines as well. It's like for people who can't really afford to buy gifts, you just DIY your own gift to your friend, your family, etc. And fast forward a few years of middle school, and I continued skateboarding. And I went to a design and architecture senior high school. That's the name of the school. I went to an art high school, um, which was in the inner city of Miami. I'm from the suburbs, but I would have to take an extremely long commute to get to school and high school. And I would meet kids not only that were going to my high school, but who were also commuting to go to some other high school. So I would meet kids on the train, and I would meet when I was in school, I would meet kids from every single neighborhood in Miami, which similar to if Miami has one thing similar to LA, it's its size. It's a huge or like Miami is a city, but when the kids that were coming to the high school I went to were just coming from all of South Florida. And another thing similar to LA that Miami has is what a big immigrant population it has, to the point that at least my experience is like white Americans are like the minority in Miami. And I think LA is almost in many neighborhoods the same. Um, so I went to art high school, um, and I started DIYing a little bit with just like stickers and stuff, but I mostly just like met friends who were getting really into graffiti, and they were the ones making a lot of stickers, and I was just collecting the stuff that my friends gave me. I was also from the culture in middle school of burning CDs, so I wouldn't make so much zines when I was in middle school and high school, but I would burn a lot of CDs and make playlists. And I felt like it was kind of the same. I realized later on that it's kind of the same thing or a similar thing. Um, so I went, I ended up getting a pretty big scholarship to study illustration in Pasadena. So I made it to Pasadena, and that was around 2011. And I ended up living in Pasadena for 5 years. So that's where I started to really engage with zines, see them in the library at school. I started working at the library in school, and I became friends with one of the librarians who started a zine collection. Um, the the librarian is Simone Fujita. She's still a librarian. Now she works at the Getty, I believe. I hope I'm getting that correct. And she started an amazing zine collection. Like it wasn't they were the zines I think were already there. Some of them were already there, but she organized this so that it was in a place that you can go to, and she encouraged a lot of current students to contribute. And I became Simone's intern. She got a grant for this zine project, and so she was able to hire me as an intern, and I helped her organize zine workshops that different professors hosted, and that was basically it. It was like a 1 year long project where we helped organize maybe 5 or 6 workshops, which maybe happened once a month for a couple of semesters. And so that's when I started to make my own zines. Um, I was They were mostly like really silly, whatever doodles I had laying around that I would cut and paste and Xerox and staple together and make a few copies of and hand out to my friends. Um, but so many of us were engaging with this playful method of making art that we ended up making a little collective. And it was called Palm Tree Cell Phone Tower Collective, which is very specific to LA because there's all those like fake palm trees that are really silly looking, but they're towers, they're cell phone towers, I guess. Um, and that was my first, I think it was my first time like taking my zines to a table at a fair. We all collectively went to in a matter of a few months, we probably went to like 3 or 4 different fairs around LA. And the collective just consisted of whoever was making a zine who went to our school, which is ArtCenter College of Design in Pasadena. And that was a lot of us. I think it was at least 10 of us or something who all like had something to contribute to the table, be it a sticker, a pin, or a mini zine, or a print. Like, so our table usually, since we were already art students, our table was like stacked with like uh knickknacks for people to purchase. And being that our collective was so many of us, like behind the table there would be like 2 chairs, but then there would be like 4 people like sitting on the floor, like folding and stapling, or like just like in Dominican slang, there's this word, it's called coro, which is like I think in Spanish just means chorus, but in Dominican slang, un coro is like a crowd, like so like we had a coro, we had a corito, which is like we had a crowd at our little table, which attracted more people. Like at whatever zine fest we were at, since there was already kind of like a crowd at our table, not only the folks of us that were selling stuff, but we would have all our friends come and stuff like that. We always had like a crowd at our table, and people were just there to hang out. So it's like they would look around, but then they would just come back to our table to just hang out with us. And that created like a buzz. That's the real word for what Kodo means, is like a buzz. And and it was great because just by having like this little buzz around our table, we were able to sell like so much because people were like, "Ooh, these guys are like, I don't know, there's something I don't know about these guys. Why do they have a little crowd there? Let's go. Maybe I'll buy something from them too." Like, because and that's what I'm noticing about what I noticed about zine fairs and the culture. It's just a place to make friends. Because my experience with zines, even after the my run with the zine fairs, is I'll make $5 or 10 or 15, and then I'll spend that exact same $15 at the same place where I made the $15. So it's like it's an unofficial trade because I probably bought a zine from the same person who bought my zine. So it's like we're passing the same $5 bill around. And it's like the money, it could we could almost just do away with having actual money at zine fairs. But there was um there was a moment where I did try to approach it as a way to make a buck, and that wasn't that did, that was that didn't last very long. Because I ended up living in LA 1 year longer than the average college student. Like it took me 5 whole years to graduate, and then moving to New York in 2016. And in New York, um, there is a big zine community as well. There's Eight Ball Zine. Um, there's the New York Art Book Fair, which has a whole zine pavilion. And the LA Art Book Fair, I feel like was the same thing. I think also hosted by Eight Ball. Um, so in New York, zine fairs became the place where I made all of my friends. It's like just by being there, similar to how skateboarding was with me. Like if we were both in the same place and it's like running a filter through social spaces. Like, all right, well, I caught you in my filter. Like we have something in common. We're already in the same wave on the same wavelength. If we're both here right now, we're already on the same wavelength. So for a few years between 2016 and 2019, essentially before the lockdown, um, I tabled in zine fairs around New York, and and I even sold my own zines like on the train for $1, um, and at train stations and outside of train stations. And I really only had one zine series that was growing and growing until it plateaued, which was this series of mini comics that I had about that where I was acknowledging race. And I think it was um my uh it was like a reaction to the first Trump election or something, but it was also it was a theme that I was already kind of leaning into as I was a student, this theme of acknowledging my blackness, and the comics I was making was about were just like like a silly funny way of acknowledging a much more serious topic. um so if anybody has any questions so far about what I've said, it would be great because I could take a breath. If you want to unmute, it would be even better, but you can write any questions or topics down in the chat, please. Until then, I can keep going. So yeah, I went from doing some zine fairs in LA and in New York to taking it to what I think is like the next step in a lot of this in this world, which is consignment. And I only put a few zines of the ones that I was selling at the fairs on consignment at a local comic shop here. And similarly enough, like, I'd sell one or two I'd sell one or two copies at the comic shop, and the comic shop owner would give me $5, and then I would spend those $5 at the comic shop. Like that's I see some questions. Let's see. Do you still only do zines, or do you put out other things? Thank you for that question, Virginia. I haven't done a zine in a long time, so that's not even the case anymore for me. I I have contributed I was thinking about it before this call or before this talk. I've contributed to zines fairly recently. My most recent contribution was to a film diary zine or a film journal called Crater Mag here in New York, and I contributed the cover design. And previously to that, right before that, I contributed an illustration to a zine by somebody who put together a collective called Adoko Collective. Um, but I haven't made my own zine in years, and I'm actually now I would describe myself as a as an illustrator who contributes to editorial work as an editorial illustrator and as a journalist and as a cartoonist. Um, so um, the answer to that question is yes, I put out other things. You can find me online on Instagram. You could just look up my name and you'll find some of the other stuff that I put out. I can go on and on about all of that, but I'm gonna acknowledge some of the other questions. You have skated and you have made zines. If you made a skate zine, what would be in it? That's a great question. Well, I skate still, and I'm a skateboarding fan. And if I made a skate zine, it would probably be like a big joke, like some sort of like commentary on street skateboarding spots or something like that, or like um photographs of my friends skateboarding. Um the one that I have here, this is kind of like a skate zine. I don't even know if there's any skateboarding stuff in it, but I found it at a skate park, and I could just tell that it's like skateboarding, like um sense of humor. So I think it would be something similar to this. Like this is like the ideal zine where it's just like the silliest compilation of like imagery and words and maybe some skateboarding in there. That's probably what it would be like. Uh, and I'm probably, I'm inspired by you saying that because now I'm like, gosh, why am I not doing this? I see John asked, did you notice any difference between LA and NYC zine fairs, or is it mostly the same? Good question. Um, I don't know. I think it's the same, It's like think of a zine fair, think of a zine fair like a punk show or something, right? Like they attract the same types of people, or a zine fair is like a skate park. I'm a skateboarder, so I'm always gonna think about it like that. But it's like a magnet that attracts um punks and freaks and weirdos, so you're gonna and the thing about specific to LA and NYC is that they're the two largest cities on either side of the coast, so people are coming like from all of the other smaller towns to the zine fairs, either to table or to shop, or they're tourists, international tourists. Maybe that was one of the differences if I have to like really think about it. Like I feel like in LA, the few zine fairs that I did, because LA is so big, um, if I go to if we were tabling at like Whittier, for example, it's mostly going to be the people who are studying in the area or who live in the area who are going to be at the zine fair. Whereas if you're at a zine fair in New York, um, you're gonna have like a tourist who's visiting from Europe, like just who just happened to come across the zine fair on their way to somewhere else, right? Because New York attracts tourism in a different way than LA does. I think LA is also a tourist hotspot, but in a much different way where you kind of have to in LA because things are more spread out, you have to be very intentional about where you're going. So if you're going to the zine fair, that's what you're doing. Whereas in LA, I mean, I'm sorry, whereas in New York, I think it's much more common to just happen to come across a crowd and being like, what's going on in there? And then all of a sudden you're in a little zine fair, which some coffee shop or some bookstore put together. And you might just be walking around with a pizza in your hand and walking into a zine fair. So that's like maybe the biggest difference between LA and New York. But in regards to the folks who are tabling and the folks who are participating, um, it's the same-ish. Um, I'm glad that you asked that question though, because I haven't really thought about it until I started speaking about it out loud. Um, yeah, if anyone has any other questions, I'd love to either hear you if you want to unmute or answer your questions on the chat. But to while you think of a question, I can continue speaking to Virginia's question. Um, okay, I see Ziba said, "Do I do bilingual zines?" No, I haven't done a zine in so long that I can't even say I do zines right now. I'm more of a zine collector at this point. I should I should do bilingual zines. It'd probably be pretty funny because my Spanish is um I think of I consider myself fluent and bilingual, but when it comes to writing, that's where I probably like put the accents in all the wrong places and spell everything wrong or something. But I was just at the Dominican Republic Book Fair. I was invited as a presenter there, and ever since back in May, I won a Pulitzer Prize for an article I wrote, and ever since that happened, I was um embraced by the Dominican Republic and the community of writers, cartoonists, poets out there. And and I had a presentation at first of all, the book fair in the Dominican Republic was enormous. Much bigger than any book fair or zine fair that I've ever been to in LA or New York, which is for some reason like something that I just wasn't expecting. I've never been before. I know that the book fair in Miami was pretty huge, and I remember going there quite a bit as a kid. But the Dominican Republic Book Fair was huge, and there were writers, poets, and journalists coming from all over the world. And so it took there was like an entire how do I like plaza dedicated to it, and inside the plaza there's like several museums. It's called La Plaza de Cultura. So if you go there when the book fair is not going on, it's just where you're going if you're visiting all these museums that are all in the same city block. And the book fair consisted of installing all of these temporary structures. Some were just like enormous tents, and others were more solid structures, but I could tell they're still temporary. And this was the first year that they had a comics pavilion, they called it. So I got to see all of these zines made by local cartoonists, and it was really great. It was like it was an amazing experience just to see what everyone's working on and interact with them and get to purchase some of them. Um, I do think if I have any critiques, I don't want to critique, but I do think that some of the stuff is almost too clean, like too perfect and like too many colors or something. I don't know. Coming from the American New York and LA zine culture, um, in I feel like we embrace more DIY, like flimsy, badly printed work. It's like it's for some reason it's like almost like listening to a vinyl or something where it's like there's a grit to it that I think was missing when I was looking at the work that I saw in the Dominican Republic, like specifically the cartoonists. I would have embraced or appreciated more like less of a need for perfection, which is what I think is amazing about zine cultures. But the thing is, I don't think that the folks that I saw there thought of what they were making as zines. They're just making their own comics. So um I, that's I said all of that just in response to you saying, do I make bilingual zines? But but I guess the thought that comes to mind is I feel like I'm entering a place in my life where um I will be returning to the Dominican Republic a lot more often, and not just as somebody who's visiting my family, but as somebody who's engaging with other artists out there. And I will be potentially making bilingual or just Spanish um work and or zines and um and distributing them and trading them as I return to the Dominican Republic. Um, anyone else have any other questions about what I just said? Please feel free to unmute or add on. I'm happy to see that there are more than just five people here, or even just two or three. This is it's cool to know that there's other folks listening. Um, And I hope that I did see some folks with the camera on that looked like they were like painting or drawing. So I do hope that somebody is doing that right now. Um, but yeah, um, I I think it's interesting that even though I haven't made a zine in so long, I'm still engaging with this world. Um, and I'm happy to know that it stayed strong because I was like I was part of this community, I think, for for like very directly in it. And then when lockdown happened, um my life and everybody else's life changed and zine fairs disappeared and some people came back or continued to do it through the mail. And some people like myself just like shifted gears and went in another direction. So I think I don't want to blame the lockdown. I feel like it's kind of like a lame excuse, but it definitely forced me to shift gears and like think about other things that I want to do. And I when lockdown kind of ended, but the pandemic was still very present, I I got a job at the Brooklyn Public Library. Which I didn't mention when I spoke earlier, but essentially, having worked at the library in art school when I was in Pasadena led me to continue working in libraries because it was like as somebody who went to college when I was 18, I didn't really have much work experience, and then when I graduated from college, the only work experience that I had was at the library in school. So um, I worked in the New York Public Library for a while. Then I got another job, which lasted throughout the beginning of the pandemic, and I was with and I was let go, and then I went back to looking for work in libraries. So the job that I got, um, which was uh at another library, was specifically providing library service on Rikers Island, which is like I like to say, especially to West Coast folks, that Rikers Island is like the Alcatraz of the East Coast. And unlike Alcatraz, which is closed, Rikers Island remains open. And it's this island with a total of 10 buildings, which are all different jails. And when I started the job for the library, providing library service there, um, being that lockdown season was still recent, the island was extremely understaffed. So it was a very wild place to be. Um, and and we as a library team were understaffed as well. And I still think that the library team is understaffed because um the ratio of people who need books to the librarians who can provide them is just doesn't make any sense. But we were there with our little book cart distributing what we could. And while I was there, the outreach department or one of the managers of the outreach department started um a zine for incarcerated folks. Um it mostly started as just a zine filled with crossword puzzles, but the crossword puzzle zine became like an incentive, like almost like a pamphlet with information so that the folks who are incarcerated can contribute their own contributions to the following issue. So that got a lot of responses, and that was how I kind of was able to continue my zine adventures without necessarily having to be a contributor myself. And I worked at that job for 2 years straight. I'm actually going to be returning very soon as a volunteer. Um, and as many folks here may know or not know, I ended up creating an article that I both wrote and illustrated for the New Yorker, which is what won the Pulitzer Prize this past May. So now I'm in the process of putting together a book about my experiences, and that's just where I'm at right now in regards to my career and everything. It's like I'm trying to focus more on a book length deal. But I think it all started with the smaller commitments, these more um immediate projects, which were the things that I was doing when I was working at New York Public Library. Like um I essentially would be on the job, like sitting at the librarian desk, and if it was a slow day and not many folks were coming in, I would be like folding and stapling throughout 2016, 2017, and 2018. So yeah, it's a hustle. It was a hustle at the time, and it was a lot of fun. And I got to meet a lot of people. Um, but I'm sure I missed a lot of very specific experiences that maybe another question could inspire me to remember, but that's basically my zine my zine and my art journey, so to speak. I think I see that Ziba has promoted that there is, which I encourage folks to check out, that Salvadora Sosa Prieto interviewed me for the Los Angeles Public Library, and it was recently published. So if you just Google LAPL and my name, Medar de la Cruz, you should be able to find that interview. I saw that Ziba asked that I like De La Soul. Would I ever consider making a De La Soul fanzine or hip hop in general fanzine? Yes. Um, I I've never actually made a fanzine, and I know that that's the real origin of zine culture, especially in punk rock and graffiti and even skateboarding. And I think it's only a matter of time before I get back into participating to that extent. Um, this past couple of years, I started to go to punk shows, mostly because I had a coworker who was in an amazing punk band, and I would just go try to go see them perform as often as I could. And then that just led me to seeking out my own shows. And there's always a merch table with a bunch of zines and stickers and stuff like patches that you can purchase for a few dollars. And I always see these things and I'm always like, I wish I was there. I wish I had my own drawing there on a flyer or whatever. So I think it's only a matter of time before I stop wishing that I'm doing it and just feel possessed to do it on my own. Um, I see, Ziba, that you went to the Zine Librarians Conference, which I think is amazing. Okay, I didn't know that that was a thing. I think it's amazing that zine librarians are becoming more common. I remember when I worked for NYPL, the the New York Public Library zine collection just became official, and like, that I think this is such an important thing. Like the work of archivists is so important. So um I'm so glad that that this is happening. I see John asked, did your Rikers reportage start as a journal or a zine? And how did your zine experience influence that? Also, did you offer the New Yorker that material, or did they ask you for it? Okay, so the last question is basically going to hopefully answer the first two. Um, so the the modern day zine is Instagram. And before Instagram was when I really was like kind of engaging with zines. But unfortunately, I will have to say there's a level, I think, of sadness to it all. But unfortunately, now with Instagram, you could just get almost some of the same connections, not really the same, but you're creating the same connections. So I put my work out on Instagram, and I when I started the job at Rikers, I updated my friends about my job um by putting a drawing up online, which um was a drawing that I did from memory about working at Rikers, right? And that is what led to the New Yorker reaching out to me. Um and to backtrack even more, um because of zines and comics and zine fests, I or specifically actually and conferences as well. There's an illustration conference that happens every couple of years. while I was there, I met another cartoonist who I kept in touch with, a New Yorker, and whom I would see at comics fairs. And he ended up becoming an art director for the New York Times. So he hired me for my very first illustration gig for an editorial publication, which is the New York Times. And I did a tiny little spot illustration for them. And so the story goes, from what I heard from the other art director, is that she saw that illustration that was on the New York Times and then heard about me like that, and then went on my Instagram and then saw the drawing that I posted about Rikers and then reached out to me. Um, and that process lasted, the process of working on the article was kind of broken into two parts, because the first part was the art director and I, Aviva Mikhailov is the art director's name. Aviva and I pitching put, putting together a pitch for David Remnick, who's the chief editor of the New Yorker, to approve. And that took a few months. And then once David Remnick approved it, the rest of the New Yorker's team came in, not the rest, but editors and fact checkers kind of became part of the team that helped create the article. And that itself, especially the fact checking process and the editing process, was very tedious. So after a total of 7 months and a half or something, the article was published. So did I definitely didn't start it as a zine. It was more of a journal, but even a journal is implies that I was an organized person, which I'm not. Like, the real way that it started was the because in jail electronics are not allowed, essentially, or I mean, at least from, we weren't allowed to bring any or have any on us. We would take book requests on paper, and it was like this little grid of like returns and requests. That was like the person's name. And I would take I would take a request or write down a return, and then I would see something or hear something that somebody said that caught my attention, and I would flip that paper over and I would do a really quick drawing or write down a really quick phrase. So that's how my Rikers reportage started. It was like I accumulated a small stack of like very quick drawings, which led to much more detailed illustrations over time that I basically developed. Um, and how did my zine experience influence all that? I guess it's not even my zine experience that influenced that. It's just my desire to. It's like, the thing about zines and my experience with zines is like, people who make them just want to have like a fixation with using their hands a lot. I think, like cutting, stapling, just so it becomes a habit, right? And I can't really sit still very well. Even if, for example, there are no materials to make art with, then the experience becomes to read the art, to flip through the zine. Like, I'm either flipping through something and reading it, or making something, or cooking and eating. Like, my hands are always busy. So I as I was on the job, for example, and somebody was patiently looking through our book cart, I would just be like like this, like using just continuous. I couldn't just sit still and kind of like, I mean, I could make some conversation, but even while making conversation, sometimes I'll be doodling. So it's like, I don't know if it's a direct answer to your question about my zine experience influencing it or not, but it's definitely a result of just my the habits that I formed over which definitely started when I was 10 years old or even younger than that, it's just I it the world of zine fairs and everything um essentially made it made me feel that it was okay to put something together with little to no money. And that's the working on the article um basically inspired me to know that I have a story, like my what I'm experiencing is worth sharing, and regardless of having access to um certain tools or certain budgets, etc. Like I think everybody has something worth sharing. My experience is very particular, but I think for any folk who who just kind of takes a look around there, especially us in these bigger cities, there's so much to there's so much to get inspired by, and there's so not only to get inspired by, but quite frankly, to be angry at even, because that's really what inspired the article about Rikers Island. It's like I'm upset that this place exists. I'm upset with how unfair the justice system is and how it treats people of color and how it's rooted in racism and it's rooted in slavery. And I think a lot of DIY punk culture is kind of the same. It's not just I want to do this because I like this. It's like I'm angry, it's like anarchist propaganda, And I think um the article that I wrote, even though it was edited and fact checked, etc., it still came from that same part in my heart. And the approach, the way that I feel like the way that I draw is the main thing that an editor or fact checker and an art director couldn't necessarily edit very much. They could edit my words, but I think with how I draw, um, I express this raw emotion, which was very much influenced by skateboarding, punk music, underground rap music, graffiti, uh, and the world of zines and the world of DIY culture. I see a question. When do I start up as a volunteer again? Can we expect more drawings from your time there? So I'm starting as a volunteer. Actually, on this week, I'm gonna be going back to the library just to volunteer with the collection, because the collection room is always needing organization and everything. So I'm basically starting this week. In as soon as a couple weeks from now, I could already be going back to Rikers. I had to apply for um my volunteer ID to enter the jail. So that could be happening as soon as hopefully the next few weeks. And can you expect more drawings from my time there? Absolutely. That's gonna be that's you know that's something I can't help but do at this point. So how soon? That's another case. It could be years before I publish something else about that. But absolutely. I see another question. Do I consider myself a zinester? So I can tell my friends a zinester won a Pulitzer. Um, uh, I think I have trouble with saying I'm a zinester since it's been so long since I've made one, but sure, you can tell your friends that. Um, I think I wouldn't be surprised that many zinesters have won big prizes like that, because um it takes this I'm gonna do it anyway attitude to to really pursue a career and take it seriously. Um, so um, I'm sure that there's so many more of us amongst like the the world of publishing and writing, etc., who are like who are just at the point in their career where they're mostly doing collecting and less making, maybe like I am. Like I'm looking at my racks right now, and there's just so many zines that I probably haven't even finished going through. Um, but here I am still picking up whatever like zine I can get my hand on, and still engaging with the culture. So sure, I can call myself a zinester, why not? And I think it's only a matter of time before I put something out again. I just think the last few years have been like circumstances which have been in the way of me like putting it out with as much consistency. But I do think that we're in a political time right now where like my anger is gonna boil up to the point of just like handing out pamphlets and zines, like just like angry rants about how much I disagree with the politics of what's going on. So it's only a matter of time. I see Salvadora, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Medar. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, I have a questions. Do you think that creating zines is a good starting point for people who are here and they just want to begin sharing their stories through a zine?
Absolutely. Like I said, like I love this example. I'm gonna keep using it. It's called Zaki Times. This is just one paper, right? And like it's not even really a mini zine. It's like I folded it like this because it seemed like the right way to fold it, but I actually when I picked it up, it was just like this. Um, and so the it's so accessible, there's no wrong way to do it. I think the more you do it, the more you do it how you feel like it or how um, how you envision it. But I think it's a great way to get your work out there to make it's I don't even want to think about it like getting your work out there or networking because it's like those words I don't even like them anymore. I feel like the best way that I thought about it before starting this call was like it's a gift, like if you have a friend who lives even too far away for you to drive, you can send them something nice in the mail, It's like I have never been able to afford to buy nice gifts, so I've always like drawn something really quickly from for family members and friends. And a zine is like a nice gift for someone, to give to somebody that you either already know or somebody that you've never met. Um, and you get to save your money. You don't you don't have to like prove your love to somebody or your appreciation to somebody with how much you spend. It's more about how much time you spend on something.
Yeah, and I also was thinking in creating a scenes for someone that they would like to share their story or something or to talk about something that they like to talk, but they don't have the resources, as you said before. You don't need any money, so but maybe their ideas, they already have ideas, or maybe they want to write poetry or whatever it is. So creating a scene, I think this is the good starting point for them.
Yeah, and I would encourage folks to go not just to FedEx or Kinko's, but to the library where most public libraries, especially in LA and New York, have a copy machine, and so you can just like write and draw on anything and then use the copy machine and then make multiple copies of it for hopefully less than a few dollars. Um, so yeah, it's I think it's an amazing way to experiment, and it's very accessible, it's extremely even pharmacies have copy machines. In some pharmacies, CVS or something, you can go and use a copy machine. So it's so available, and an interesting culture that has been around for I think hundreds of years, honestly. I think it's technically as we know it, it's only been around for less than 100 years, but if you really think about however long the printing press has been around for, that's probably the first time that people started to like create their own DIY propaganda, which is the way I think about it as.
Definitely. Medar, can you share with our patrons or people that are here where they can find your zine collection? Because I know that you have more zines that you created in the past.
I don't,
You
no,
don't have
actually,
you don't have
um,
more than the one that we have in the catalog.
the
How about
only,
the art scene, the
the
art center?
only, yeah, the only place you're gonna be able to find a couple more zines that I've made is if you drive all the way up to ArtCenter College of Design in Pasadena and you go
Yeah,
into their library and you ask. I actually just found out that they still have some zines that are about 10 years old that I made, which I thought was fascinating. It's a very, but I know that the LA Public Library just put one of my zines in circulation, which I'm really happy about. It's really exciting to think that that's happening, and Ziba just put it on the chat if anybody
yeah, we
wants.
have the link right there, so you can put a hold on
Yeah,
the
but
stuff. Yeah,
there's that's the thing. I haven't I that one zine that Ziba put into circulation, or that you and Ziba put into circulation for the Los Angeles Public Library, was the only one that I still had the PDF file for. Because when I was a student and making the zines that I made, um, they were just many of them didn't even use PDF files. They were like kind of thrown together on the spot without any they were like the most raw zine making approaches in that sense, because there was just I didn't even know how to put together a good PDF file at the time. And then when I moved to New York, I made the comics zine that is in circulation now, um, with like a PDF file that I somehow still had. So there is no other place. You can see more of my work online at on my website, which is mdlcomics.com, and my Instagram, which is mdlcomics. Um, so yeah, that's my Instagram, MDL Comics. That's where you can see more of my work. And then if I ever do have anything for sale or anything of that sort, you'll find out on my Instagram more likely than not. Um,
thank you, Medar.
yeah, thank you. Um,
And
if
thank
anybody else,
you.
if anyone else has any more questions, I have been yapping for an hour, so I understand, if you're all ready to move on with your day. But if you have any more questions, I can answer them quickly.
No, we've heard from almost everyone here except a few. So now's your chance. Judy, Carla, Cesar, Andrea. Any last minute burning questions before we wrap it up?
If not, I just want to say I really appreciate that all of you folks joined the call, and I appreciate you, Ziba and Salvadora, for making me feel that I still have a strong connection to LA, all the way over here in the East Coast. Um, I love LA. I went there so many times last year, and I will continue going back there for the rest of my life. It's a very special place for me, um, and the world is a lot smaller now when we think about it in as far as people who are engaged in the world, in libraries and zines. So I'm glad that we made the world that much smaller. We made these coast to coast connections that much smaller by staying in conversation, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And everyone, you can see this posted on YouTube later. For anyone that missed it, I already got an email. Somebody wants to see the link because they missed it. And big thanks. Yes. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Andrea. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.